The galaxy was old, older than most species could imagine, older than the stars that burned at its edges, and in all that time, across all those billions of years, one empire had stood above every other. The Vreth, they did not ask for territory, they took it. They did not negotiate with weaker species. They erased them planet by planet, system by system, century by century. The Vreth had built the largest empire the galaxy had ever seen, and they had done it with one simple rule. Anything that could one day challenge them had to be removed. Not defeated, not enslaved, removed. The Council Hall of Vreth Prime was a massive structure, so tall that clouds formed inside its upper levels. 12 council members sat at the top, looking down at everything below them. They had sat in those seats for thousands of years. They believed they would sit there forever. Below them, in the lower halls, junior officers worked through endless files, endless star maps, endless records of conquered systems. One of those junior officers was named Kale. He was young by Vreth standards, only 300 years old. He had dark gray skin, pale yellow eyes, and the kind of quiet mind that noticed things others ignored. Most Vreth officers wanted glory, wanted promotion, wanted to be noticed by the council. Kale just wanted to understand things. That was his problem, that was always his problem. It started on a Tuesday, which meant nothing to most of the galaxy, but was simply another long shift for Kale. He was reviewing old star maps, cross-checking sector data from 50,000 years ago. Routine work, boring work, the kind of work that senior officers gave to junior officers because they did not want to do it themselves. Kale moved through the data slowly and carefully, sector after sector, system after system, and then he found it, or rather, he found the space where something used to be. Sector 7 Omega, on the current star maps. It was empty, just dead space, no systems, no planets, no history. But on the 50,000-year-old maps, the same sector had 17 star systems, hundreds of planets, and a civilization marker, the kind the Vreth used to mark species advanced enough to be considered a threat. Kale leaned closer to his screen. The civilization marker had a name attached to it. But the name had been deleted, not hidden, not classified, deleted. Someone had gone back into the records, 50,000 years ago, and removed every trace of whatever lived in Sector 7 Omega. Kale sat back in his chair. In 300 years of life, he had never seen a complete deletion. The Vreth kept records of everything. Even the species they destroyed, even the planets they burned. There were files on every civilization the Empire had ever removed. But not this one. This one was gone. He did not report it immediately. He told himself it was because he wanted to investigate further before bringing it to his supervisors. But the truth was simpler. Something about that empty space on the map made him nervous. He spent 3 more days quietly searching, looking through backup files, through old military records, through anything that might have survived the deletion. He found almost nothing, almost in a backup archive so old it was practically dust. He found a single line of text. It had no context, no file name, no date, just one sentence buried in corrupted data. We made the right decision. Do not look back. Do not speak of them. Do not. The sentence ended there, cut off, as if whoever wrote it had stopped themselves. Kale read it 7 times. Then he did something that went against every instinct his Vreth training had given him. He went to find Elder Vran. Elder Vran was the oldest soldier in the Vreth military. 900 years old, long retired, living in the lower districts of Vreth Prime, in a small building that smelled like old metal and dust. Most young officers did not visit Elder Vran. He was considered a strange old soldier who talked too much and said too little. But Kale had heard rumors that Vran had served during the earliest campaigns, that he had been there during operations so old they were no longer in any official history. Kale found the old soldier sitting outside his building, watching the traffic move across the city skyline. He looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with age. Kale sat beside him and said nothing for a while. Then he showed Vran the star map on his datapad, the empty space where Sector 7 Omega should have been. The old soldier's pale eyes moved to the screen, and then something happened that Kale had never seen on a Vreth face before. Fear, real fear, the kind that lives deep in a person's bones and never fully leaves. Vran looked away from the screen quickly. "Close that," he said quietly. Kale closed it for a long moment. The old soldier said nothing. Then he spoke very slowly, as if choosing each word like a soldier choosing where to step in a minefield. "There was a species," he said, A long time ago, long before you were born, long before most of this city was built, he paused. They were not the strongest species we had ever encountered. They did not have the biggest ships. They did not have the most advanced weapons. Another pause. But they were strange in a way that made the council nervous. Strange how? Kyle asked. Vron was quiet for a long moment. They did not give up, he finally said. Most species, when they understand they are losing, they stop, they surrender, or they scatter, or they simply accept the end. That is the natural response. That is what every species does. He turned and looked at Kale directly. These ones did not. We destroyed their fleets and they built more. We burned their colonies and they moved deeper into space. We hit them again and again and they kept coming back. Not with more weapons, but with more something. We did not have a word for it. What happened to them? Kale asked. Vron turned back to the skyline. The council decided that a species like that could not be allowed to continue. If they would not break, they had to be removed completely. Every planet, every colony, every record, everything. He paused one final time. It took us 400 years. Kale sat very still. And were they gone? He asked. After 400 years, were they actually gone? Vron did not answer. He simply said very quietly, I hear them sometimes in my sleep. Then he stood up slowly and went inside and closed the door. Kale returned to his office and sat in the dark for a long time. He pulled up the old star maps again. Sector 7 Omega, empty space, deleted name. One broken sentence in a corrupted file. Do not look back. He thought about what Vran had said. A species that would not break. A species that the Vreth had spent 400 years erasing completely. And no records left behind. Not because the records were lost, but because someone had been afraid to keep them. That thought sat in Kale's chest like a cold stone. He was still sitting there when the alert came through. A border station in the outer sectors had gone dark. No distress signal. No explosion detected. No communication of any kind, just silence. The report said it was probably a technical failure. These things happened sometimes. Kale looked at the report, then looked at his star map. Then looked at the report again, the border station that had gone dark. It was in the direction of Sector 7 Omega. He checked the coordinates 3 times. Then he sat very still and felt something move through him that he did not have a good word for. It was not quite fear. It was the feeling a person gets when they realize that a door they thought was closed has been open the whole time, and something on the other side has been watching and waiting and is now finally moving. Kale looked at the empty space on the star map where a civilization used to be, where a name used to be, where 50,000 years of history had been deleted by people who were afraid. And he thought about what Vron had said. We made the right decision. And then he thought about the old soldier's face, the fear that lived in his bones after 900 years. And Kale understood something that the council did not seem to understand. You can delete a name from a map. You can burn a planet and scatter its people. You can spend 400 years making sure nothing is left. But you cannot delete what a people carry inside them. You cannot erase what they remember. And you cannot know, not truly, what 50,000 years of silence means until the silence ends. Part 2, they are coming back. HFY Sci-Fi Story, 3rd person. 1,500 words. The first station went dark on a Monday. Nobody panicked. Border stations went dark sometimes. Equipment failed, power systems crashed. These things happened in deep space where maintenance crews took weeks to arrive. The Vreth military logged it as a technical failure and moved on. The second station went dark 3 days later. Still, nobody panicked. 2 failures in 1 week was unusual, but not impossible. The report said the same thing. Technical failure, maintenance crew dispatched. The third station went dark before the maintenance crew reached the second one. That was when Kale stopped sleeping. He sat in his office with 3 screens open in front of him. On the first screen, the official military reports, each one saying the same thing. Technical failure, under investigation. No cause for concern. On the second screen, the locations of every station that had gone dark, plotted on a star map. On the third screen, Sector 7 Omega, he did not need a computer to see the pattern. Every station that had gone silent was on the same line, a straight path through deep space. Starting from the direction of Sector 7 Omega and moving, slowly and steadily toward Vreth Prime. Something was coming, and it was turning off the lights as it moved. Kale brought his findings to his direct supervisor, Commander Dreth, a large Vreth officer with a long service record and a very short temper. Dreth looked at the star map for approximately 4 seconds. Then he looked at Kale. "You are connecting events that have no connection," Dreth said. "Station failures happen. They do not happen because of ancient ghost stories about deleted civilizations." "Sir, the pattern is very clear," Kale said carefully. "If you draw a line from each failed station back to its origin point, every single line points to Sector 7. "I know what sector it points to," Dreth said. His voice had changed slightly. Just slightly. Kale noticed it. "Then you see the pattern," Kale said. Dreth stood up from his desk, which meant the conversation was over. "I see a junior officer who has been reading old corrupted files and has frightened himself," Dreth said. "Log your concerns in the standard report system and go back to your assigned work." He paused at the door. "And Kale," he said without turning around, "stop looking at Sector 7 Omega. There is nothing there. There has never been anything there." He left. Kale sat alone in the commander's office for a moment. He thought about the way Dreth's voice had changed. Not angry, not dismissive, nervous. Dreth knew something, or suspected something, and he was more afraid of that something than he was interested in stopping it. That told Kale everything he needed to know. He went back to the old archives that night. He had already searched them once. When he first found the deletion in Sector 7 Omega, he had found almost nothing, but this time he searched differently. Instead of looking for information about the deleted species, he looked for information about the Vreth soldiers who had fought them. It was a small difference. It changed everything. Because while the Council had deleted all records of the species itself, they had not perfectly deleted every mention of the campaign from Vreth military records. There were gaps, inconsistencies, places where a soldier's service record jumped forward by decades with no missions listed. The kind of gaps that appeared when missions were classified so deeply they were essentially erased. And in one very old, very damaged personnel file, Kale found something. A name, half corrupted, but readable. Operation Omega Final. Duration, 412 years. Objective listed as complete removal. Status, listed as successful. And then below the status, in text so faded it was almost invisible, someone had added a note by hand, something that was never meant to be in an official file. Successful? Yes. But I watched the last of them. They did not beg. They did not run. The last soldier standing looked at us and said something in their language. We never translated it. I think we were afraid to know what it meant. I still see that soldier in my dreams after 200 years. I still see them. We won. I know we won. So why does it feel like we only won the first part? The note ended there. Kale read it 4 times. Then he saved it to a private file and closed the archive. The 4th border station went dark while he was walking back to his quarters. He received the alert on his communicator. He stopped walking and stood in the middle of the corridor and looked at the alert. Then he updated his star map. 4 stations, 4 points of darkness, all on the same line. The line was getting shorter. Whatever was moving through that space, it was not moving fast. It was not rushing. It was not attacking in any aggressive sense. It was simply moving. Steadily, quietly, with complete patience, and every Vreth station it passed simply stopped existing. Not destroyed as far as sensors could tell. Not damaged. Just silent. As if someone had walked past a row of candles and put each one out with their fingers. Quietly, calmly, without hurry. On the 7th day, the Council made an announcement. They called it a sensor anomaly in the outer border regions. They said that old equipment was being replaced. They said there was no cause for concern. They said everything was under control. That same day, 3 more stations went dark. Kale watched the numbers from his office and felt something very cold settle into his thoughts. The Council was lying. That was not surprising. The Council lied when it suited them. That was simply how they operated. But the Council was also afraid. And that was new. In 300 years, Kale had never seen the Council afraid of anything. They had fought wars against powerful empires and won. They had faced weapons that could destroy moons and found ways to counter them. They had always been the most dangerous thing in any room. But right now, in the private communications that Kale was not supposed to be reading but was reading anyway, the council members were very carefully not saying the name of what they were afraid of. They were talking around it, using words like the anomaly and the outer situation and the border matter, never a direct name. Because to name something was to admit it was real. And they were not ready to admit that yet. Kale found the old video on the 9th day. It was buried so deeply in the military archive that he almost missed it. A visual recording, 50,000 years old. So degraded that most of it was just noise and static, but pieces of it were still visible. It showed a battle. Vreth warships, old designs, 50,000-year-old technology, firing on a much smaller fleet of ships Kale did not recognize. The unknown ships were clearly losing. They were outnumbered 20-1. Their hulls were breaking apart. Their formations were collapsing, and still they did not run. They kept fighting, kept maneuvering, kept pressing forward even as their ships fell apart around them. Kale watched with his chest very tight. He watched one small ship ram itself directly into a Vreth cruiser rather than retreat. He watched another ship, hull completely broken open, engines dead, fire its weapons one final time before going dark. They did not stop. Even at the very end, they did not stop. And then the recording reached its final seconds. The last remaining ship of the unknown fleet was surrounded. Completely surrounded, no escape possible, no hope remaining. The Vreth ships were closing in, and the recording caught one final image before it dissolved into static. A figure. Standing at the front viewport of the last ship, looking out, looking directly at the Vreth ships surrounding them. The image quality was terrible. 50,000 years of degradation had blurred almost everything, but two things were still visible. The figure was small, smaller than any Vreth, standing completely straight, completely still, and they were smiling. Not a desperate smile, not a scared smile, a quiet, patient, completely calm smile, the kind of smile that a person wears when they know something the other person does not. The recording ended. Kale sat in complete silence for a very long time. Then his communicator lit up with an emergency alert. A massive object had just entered Vreth sensor range, coming from the direction of Sector 7 Omega. Moving slowly, moving calmly, moving without any hurry at all. And as Kale looked at the alert, one more border station went dark behind it like a door closing, like something making sure there was no way to call for help, like something that had waited 50,000 years for this moment, and was in absolutely no rush now that it had finally arrived. The object stopped, just like that. No slowing down, no gradual deceleration, no warning. One moment it was moving. The next moment it was completely still, as if it had always been there, as if it belonged there, as if the empty space around it was simply where it had chosen to stand. And then it did nothing. For 3 days, it did absolutely nothing. The Vreth fleet that surrounded it was the largest military gathering in 5,000 years. 10,000 warships arranged in a perfect sphere around the object, every weapon charged, every crew at battle stations, every commander waiting for the order. The order never came. Because the council was looking at their sensor data and trying to understand what they were seeing. The object was large, larger than any ship the Vreth had ever built, larger than some of the smaller moons in the outer systems. But it did not look like a weapon. It did not look like a warship. It was long and dark and almost simple in its design, like something that had been built purely for function with no interest in looking impressive. No visible weapons, no visible engines, no visible anything. Just a long dark shape sitting in space, completely still, completely silent. And every Vreth sensor pointed at it was screaming a single word: danger. Not because of anything the object was doing, but because of what the sensors could not read. They could not scan inside it. Every scanning frequency the Vreth used bounced back empty, as if the object was not really there at all, as if it was a hole in space shaped like a ship. The council had spent 200,000 years making enemies, and in one morning every single one of those enemies remembered exactly why they hated the Vreth, and decided to see what happened next. Kyle watched the council argue. They argued for 6 hours straight. One faction wanted to attack immediately, overwhelm the object with pure firepower before it could do anything. 10,000 warships firing at once had to count for something. Another faction wanted to negotiate, send a diplomatic communication, buy time. A third faction said nothing. They just sat very still and looked at the sensor data and did not seem to want to say what they were actually thinking. Cale knew what they were thinking. He had seen the old video, the last ship, the last soldier, the smile. He was thinking it too. What do you say to something that waited 50,000 years? What do you offer something that has had 50,000 years to decide exactly what it wants? What do you threaten something that has already survived the worst thing you could do to it? Admiral Voss made the decision. She opened a communication channel toward the object. The command center went completely silent. "Unknown vessel," Voss said, her voice steady and professional. "You are surrounded by 10,000 Vreth warships. Identify yourself and state your intentions." Silence. 30 seconds of silence. Then the channel opened from the other side, and a voice came through. It was a human voice, though nobody in the room knew that word yet. It was different from any Vreth voice, softer in some ways, harder in others, with a quality that was difficult to describe. Calm, that was the word. Completely and utterly calm. "We know how many ships you have," the voice said. "We counted them. We have been counting Vreth ships for 50,000 years. We know every class, every weapon system, every tactical pattern your military has ever used." A pause. "You taught us. Every battle you fought against us. Every strategy you used to destroy us. We studied all of it. We had a very long time to study." Another pause. "We are the species you erased from your star maps. We are the civilization you spent 400 years destroying. We are the people whose name you deleted because you were afraid to remember it." The voice paused one final time. "My name is Commander Elena Vasquez. I speak for humanity. We have come back." The council ordered the attack 12 minutes later. Cale saw the order go out, saw 10,000 commanders receive it simultaneously, saw the fleet begin to move into firing position. He wanted to stop it. He had no power to stop it. The first wave fired. 10,000 ships firing simultaneously was something that could be seen from other star systems. The light alone was blinding. The energy released was enough to crack a small moon. All of it hit the human ship. The command center watched the sensor data, and the sensor data showed something that made the entire room go very quiet. The human ship had not moved, had not raised any visible shields, had not deployed any visible defensive systems. It had simply absorbed every shot, every single one, as if the energy meant nothing, as if 10,000 warships firing at once was simply not enough to matter. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the lights on the human ship changed. All across its long dark hull, lights that had been dim and quiet began to glow. Red, a deep, slow, patient red, like something waking up. Like something that had been very still for a very long time, finally deciding it was done. Being still, the voice of Commander Vasquez came through the communication channel one more time, very calm, very quiet. "We did not come here to destroy you," she said. "We came here because you need to understand something." A pause. "You can erase a people from every star map in the galaxy. You can burn their planets and delete their history and pretend they never existed." Another pause. "But you cannot erase what they remember. And you cannot know, not truly, what a people become when you give them 50,000 years to remember it." The red lights pulsed once, slowly, across the entire length of the ship, and then the ship did something that no Vreth sensor had predicted, no Vreth tactical computer had calculated, no Vreth admiral had prepared for. It opened. The ship opened slowly, not like a weapon, not like a door preparing to fire something devastating into the Vreth fleet, like a flower. That was the only way Cale could describe it later, when he tried to explain what he saw to people who were not there. The long dark hull of the human ship unfolded outward in sections, slowly, deliberately, with complete calm, and inside, light, warm, steady, golden light, pouring out into the cold darkness of space, so different from the harsh white light of Vreth ships that several officers in the command center actually stepped back from their screens. And then the things inside the ship became visible. Not weapons, not soldiers. Records, holographic projections began broadcasting outward from the open ship, expanding into the space around it, growing so large that they were visible to every ship in the Vreth fleet simultaneously. Images, documents, names, dates, thousands of them, then tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands. Kyle stared at the main screen and slowly understood what he was seeing. Every species the Vreth had ever destroyed, every planet they had ever burned, every civilization they had ever erased from existence, the humans had kept records of all of it. While the Vreth had been deleting history, the humans had been collecting it, preserving it, storing it carefully across 50,000 years. Every name that the Vreth had tried to erase was now floating in open space for the entire galaxy to see. And the entire galaxy was watching, because Commander Vasquez had sent the signal to everyone, not just the Vreth, not just the fleet. Everyone, every species, every planet, every ship with a receiver. All of them watching the same broadcast, all of them seeing the same list of names, all of them understanding for the first time the true size of what the Vreth had done. It took 23 minutes to display all the names. 23 minutes of silence in the Vreth command center. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Nobody gave orders. They just watched. Kale watched too. He watched the names of civilizations scroll past that he had never heard of, had never been taught about, had never known existed, because they had been erased before he was born. Species with beautiful names, species with complex names, species with names that were more like music than language. All gone, all remembered, by the one people the Vreth had tried hardest to forget. The council finally reacted on the 7th minute. They cut the main broadcast feed inside Vreth Prime, blocked the signal across all Vreth-controlled planets, ordered communications blackout across the Empire, but it was already too late. The signal had been broadcasting for 7 minutes before the council moved. 7 minutes was enough. Every species that was not under Vreth control had already received the full transmission, were already copying it, sharing it, sending it further across the galaxy. You cannot unring a bell. The council sat in their high seats and understood that something had just changed permanently. They just did not understand yet how permanent it was. Kyle left the command center. Nobody stopped him. Nobody noticed him leave. Every eye in the room was on the screens. Every mind in the room was trying to process what was happening. He walked through the corridors of the military complex, slowly, thinking. He thought about Elder Vran, sitting outside his small building looking tired in a way that had nothing to do with age. He thought about the corrupted file, the handwritten note from a soldier 200 years ago. We won, I know we won. So why does it feel like we only won the first part? He thought about the old video, the last human ship, the last human soldier, standing straight, completely still, smiling. And he thought about what Commander Vasquez had said. You cannot erase what they remember. He stopped walking. He was standing in an empty corridor, alone, quiet. And he made a decision. It took him 40 minutes to find a communication terminal that was not being monitored. In the chaos of the current situation, with officers running everywhere and commanders shouting and the council in emergency session, finding an unwatched terminal was easier than it should have been. He sat down. He opened a channel, not to the council, not to Admiral Voss, not to any Vreth authority. He opened a direct channel to the human ship. His hands were not shaking. He was surprised by that. He had expected them to shake. The channel connected. Silence for a moment. Then, "This is the human vessel, identify yourself." The voice was different from Vasquez, younger, more careful. "My name is Kale," he said. "I am a junior officer in the Vreth military. I am not speaking on behalf of the council. I am not speaking on behalf of the fleet. I am speaking only for myself." A pause. "I know what we did," he said. "I found the records. I found what was deleted. I found the video of your last battle. I spoke to an old soldier who was there." His voice stayed steady. "I am sorry," he said. "I know that is a very small thing to say. I know it does not fix anything. I know it does not bring back what was lost, but I did not want to stay silent. I did not want to be another Vreth who knew the truth and said nothing. Long silence on the other end. Then the channel shifted. A different voice came on, Commander Elena Vasquez. How old are you, Kyle? She asked. 300 years, he said. So you were not there, she said. You did not make the decision, you did not fight in the campaign. No, he said. But you know what was done, she said. Yes, he said. Another silence. When Vasquez spoke again, her voice was different, still calm, but with something underneath it, something that had been held very carefully for a very long time. Do you know what the last soldier said, she asked. The one in the video, the one who was smiling, do you know what she said to your fleet before the end? No, Kyle said quietly. Your record said the Vreth never translated it. They were afraid to, Vasquez said. I understand why. A pause. She said in our language, we will remember this, and we will come back. Not for revenge, but for the record. The galaxy will know our names. Silence. And here we are, Vasquez said. The conversation lasted 2 hours. Kyle learned more in those 2 hours than he had learned in 300 years of Vreth education. He learned that humans had not spent 50,000 years building weapons. They had spent 50,000 years building everything. Ships that could absorb energy and convert it. Shields that worked by simply redirecting force. Technology that the Vreth had never imagined because the Vreth had always focused on destroying things while humans had focused on understanding things. He learned that the human population now numbered in the hundreds of billions, spread across dozens of star systems, all hidden, all quiet, all patient. He learned that the broadcast of names was not the end of their plan. It was the beginning. Every species that had suffered under Vreth rule now had proof. Undeniable, complete proof of every crime the Vreth had committed across 200,000 years. And humans had already made contact with many of those species, quietly, over decades. Building something, not an army. A coalition, not built on anger, built on memory. Built on the simple shared experience of having survived the Vreth, and now that the galaxy knew. Now that every species had seen the names, the proof, the records that humans had kept for 50,000 years. The Vreth Empire had no allies left. Not one. The Council fell within a year. Not from a military attack. The humans never fired a single offensive shot. From the inside, species after species that had been under Vreth control for centuries simply stopped cooperating. Trade routes closed, supply chains broke, military agreements dissolved. The Vreth Empire had been built on fear and on the belief that the Vreth were unstoppable. The moment the galaxy saw that something had stopped them, simply parked outside their home system and made them afraid to fire a second shot. That belief collapsed, and without the belief, the Empire had nothing. Kale met Commander Vasquez in person 6 months after their first communication. She was older than he had expected, small, quiet, with dark, tired eyes that had seen a great deal. They sat together in a room that was neither Vreth nor human, a neutral station, borrowed space. She put a datapad on the table between them. On it was a star map, Sector 7 Omega. And on this map, unlike every Vreth map Kale had ever seen, the sector was not empty. 17 star systems, hundreds of planets, and in the center, one world marked with a single word, Earth. We put it back, Vasquez said simply. Every star map in the galaxy, we put it back. Kale looked at the map for a long time. The last soldier, he said finally. The one in the video, the one who said you would come back. Yes, Vasquez said. Did you know her? He asked. Vasquez was quiet for a moment. She was my ancestor, she said. 50,000 years back. A very long family line. We kept records of that too. She looked at the map. She never got to see this, Vasquez said quietly. But she knew it would happen, she believed it would happen, she built her whole life around making sure it would happen. She paused. That is what you could not erase, she said. You can burn planets. You can delete names. You can spend 400 years making sure nothing is left. She looked at Kale directly. But you cannot burn what a mother passes to her child. You cannot delete what a people decide to carry forward. You cannot erase a promise made across 50,000 years. She closed the data pad. We remembered, she said simply. That was always enough. That night, Kale sat alone and looked at the real star map, Sector 7 Omega, restored visible real Earth, back on the map where it had always belonged. He thought about the long silence, 50,000 years of it, and what had moved through that silence. Quietly, patiently, without hurry, not anger, not hatred. Something that could not be erased or deleted or burned away. Memory, and the unbreakable decision of a people who had looked at the worst thing imaginable and smiled because they already knew they were coming back.